And we have some very sorry news to break to you here on India Today this evening. Marshal of the Air Force, Arjan Singh, has passed away. He suffered a massive heart attack earlier today. He had been critical. His health had been sinking rapidly. We can confirm to you now because the Indian Air Force has just put out a full formal statement to say that Marshal of the Air Force, Arjan Singh, has passed away. A glorious era comes to an end, says the Indian Air Force. The Marshal of the Indian Air Force, Arjan Singh, a legend, breathes his last at Army Hospital, New Delhi. Shudhi Ranjan Sen, our editor, is with us live. Shudhi Ranjan, the end of an era. He was 98 years old. He passed away at 7:47 p.m. today, Shudhi.
Yes, Shiv, absolutely. This is an end of an era, you can say, because the Marshal of the Air Force started his career when, aviation, or so to say, the Air Force was still in its infancy. He flew the biplanes, then moved on to the Second World War varieties of the Vampires, and then subsequently led the Indian Air Force when the supersonic jets were just coming into the Indian Air Force in the 1965 war, and then subsequently saw the entire development or the growth of the air power. It's indeed an end of an era. And it will be very, very difficult to bridge or meet this gap that has now been created. The Indian Air Force has now confirmed that he's no more. In fact, today morning he left his residence. What his aides at his residence told us was he left, he walked out, got into his car, he was hailed, he wished his orderlies who were there with him, and they were all expecting him, in fact, to come back. It was only later in the evening that they learned that the Marshal of the Air Force had suffered a massive cardiac arrest and was at the hospital. Shiv.
Absolutely. Can you take us, it's just been announced now. He passed away about 1.5 hours ago. It's been announced officially by the Indian Air Force now. Shudhi, he was Marshal of the Air Force, the 5-star officer of the Indian Air Force. So we can expect that there will be a great amount of military protocol as the nation bids him farewell, Shudhi.
Yes, there will be. There is a lot of protocol because he's mind you, for our viewers, he's equivalent to what Sam Manekshaw was, a field marshal, and therefore he will get full military honors. He will get a gun carriage taking his last remains. There will be a military salute. So it is, the entire regalia will be there. It will have a lot of protocol that is involved. We are now still waiting to find out when the final, the ceremony will be held. But we can expect that his body will lie in state at least tomorrow. And then the final ceremony will happen. Shiv.
Okay, the final ceremony will happen. I think, in many ways, this was a man who saw history from the air, Shudhi. I think we can safely say that, from being a young chief, he joined the Indian Air Force, of course, at the age of 19. It was the Royal Indian Air Force then. He flew missions during World War II. And he, of course, came into the national consciousness as a very young, a 45-year-old chief of air staff during the 1965 war. So in many ways, from before independence until now, Shudhi, here is an air officer who saw history from the air.
Exactly, Shiv. I mean, in fact, the entire evolution of air power, so to say, not only the Indian Air Force, the entire evolution of air power from biplanes to, the jet engines and then to the supersonic speed, everything. And as the Indian Air Force has put out, and as we all know, that he's a man that he has flown over 60 aircraft. Now, that is a huge repertoire to have, a huge number of aircrafts to have flown. Rarely, if any, today alive or in the past can claim or have, say that they have flown over 60 fighter aircraft. In fact, the Marshal of the Air Force got his medals, his honors for the Arakan's campaign and also subsequently for his role that he played leading his squadron. During the liberation of Rangoon, that is the Second World War, he fought with the Allied forces. So he's seen the entire. He not only fought with the British, he fought the Axis force, the Japanese in this case. He fought for India. He saw the 1947-48 war. In fact, the interesting part is he's perhaps the longest-serving Western Air Command chief, having held it right after the independence for about 5 years, and then again going back to hold the all-crucial Western Air Command for another two to 3 years before he became vice chief, and then subsequently becoming the chief of air staff in 1964. Shiv.
An amazing life, and we're going to keep a track of this developing story. There will be a great deal of military protocol after the passing away of a true legend, a war hero. He was the Indian Air Force chief during the 1965 war. He went on to become Marshal of the Air Force under the Vajpayee government in 2002. He's a recipient of the Padma Vibhushan. A very well-regarded officer, a proficient combat pilot who has flown in war, and a personality who was respected, liked, and epitomized the gentility and the professionalism of the Indian military. This was an officer, like Shruti Ranjan was just pointing out, whose career and life has spanned the entire gamut of the Indian Air Force. And here was an officer who every single year, despite his advancing years, would don his amazing Air Force uniform, stand ramrod straight, crack a more solid salute than many young officers even, and still be available for the protocol, performance and services that are required of an officer of his stature. Remember, the Marshal of the Air Force, like the rank of Field Marshal in the Indian Army, which is what Sam Manekshaw was, is an honorary and ceremonial rank, and it is there as a beacon of inspiration, guidance and mentorship for the rest of the service and for the military at large. And we can truly say here on India Today, as we mourn the passing of Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh, that he truly fulfilled those duties until the very last day. Gaurav Sawant, our executive editor, a journalist who has met with, interviewed and spoken to Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh so many times in the course of his career, is with me live for a quick reaction on this. The end of an era in so many ways. I mean, we use that phrase so much, Gaurav. Today, it's really true.
The five-star general, the oldest eagle who flew the highest, is now no more. That is how Indian Air Force veterans are describing Indian Air Force's five-star general, India's five-star Marshal of the Indian Air Force, who is now no more. And Shiv, as you very rightly pointed out, this is the end of an era. You and I were together last year at home at the Chief of Air Staff's house, and how Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh, he stood ramrod straight, wore his uniform with such style. He was an officer that everyone, generations looked up to.
Yes.
Fought in the 65 war so bravely, and even after that, even after he'd hung his spurs, he was an officer that the entire country was so proud of, that the Prime Minister, the Defense Minister, they were all at his side at the RNR hospital late this evening, Shiv.
Yes, absolutely. Gaurav, stay with me. I also have with us Air Marshal Vinod Bhatia, former Commander of the Western Air Command, with us on the phone line. Air Marshal Bhatia, good evening to you. A very sad day for all of us, but certainly to all of you in the Indian Air Force. Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh is no more, sir.
Yes, I think it's really a sad day for the Indian Air Force, and I would say not only for the Air Force but for the entire nation, because he was a man, an air warrior to the heart, and he was a leader par excellence. I remember actually that way back when I became a pilot officer in the Indian Air Force, when I got my commission, who gave me the wings and rings? It was none other than Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh himself, at that time sporting the rank of an Air Commodore.
Yes.
But, he rose very rapidly. And in 1965, as we all know, he led the Indian Air Force war against Pakistan. And he was the first Air Marshal who also became the Air Chief Marshal after the 1965 war.
What do you remember about him, sir? You know, you had a professional association with him. He was serving when you were an officer and a pilot as well. What do you remember most about him?
I remember many things about him, but 3 or 4 things I'd like to mention.
Yes.
One is his style of leadership, and that was, what we call a lead by example. And he was a thorough professional. He is one of the finest pilots that the Indian Air Force has ever produced. And as you know, that he has flown many different types of aircraft, starting from the good old Wapiti to the Canberras. And he used to fly, even as the chief, he used to fly the Canberras himself. And that was one thing, that is leading from the front. And the other thing was that he had a great sense of humor. And he could actually galvanize any occasion, any meeting where he was present with his very disarming smile and his acute sense of humor. And the third thing that I remember of him is that, of course, we all used to look up to him, and that he was a very, very affectionate, a great human being. And he actually thought and he lived his sentiments with you. And even as youngsters, you know, he would look at us and he'll treat us just like his equals.
It's amazing, you know, most people who ever met him, apart from his attention to detail and protocol and you know, the military grandeur that he carried around with him, he was simple, he was humorous, he had a wonderful, gentle nature that appealed to everybody. Commodore Uday Bhaskar, one of India's best known military and strategic affairs commentators, is with us also for a reaction on this sad day. Commodore Bhaskar, good evening to you. I know you knew Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh well. Your thoughts on this sad day, sir?
My first response and reaction, Shiv, really is one of great sadness.
Yes.
Because as everyone on your panel has just pointed out, he was a remarkable human being. And I would say I was very lucky that I got to know him a little bit well after he'd retired and he'd become the Marshal of the Air Force.
Yes.
And as a student of military history, as you well know, he represented the last of our generation of Indian military officers who made the transition in many ways from World War II, where, if you recall, he was decorated, all the way, I would say, in a way, up to Kargil.
Yes.
Because I recollect he had maintained such an active interest. And my interactions with him, you know, as I said, was something that I'll cherish all my life. He was a regular presence at the India International Center Library. And he was the kind of person who, I think, again, as Air Marshal Bhatia and others have pointed out, he was so gracious, so courteous, and he would reach out and evince interest in whatever we were doing.
Yes.
And pepper it with some very, very insightful comments based on his experience. So these are the kind of little vignettes that I recall about the Marshal. And I also had occasion to meet him at home. And again, he was such a gracious host.
Yes.
And this was, I remember, in the late 90s after the nuclear test. And we were sort of trying to get a sense of what was happening at that time post-Kargil. And he took so much interest in whatever we were doing at that time from the IDSA. We were trying to bring out a small publication and the air effort and so on. At that age, I mean, that was remarkable to me. I said, my God, you know, we have to sort of take our hats off and salute him for so many aspects which, you know, of his professional acumen and his qualities of head and heart. So I think, you know, we sort of celebrate, of course, his life.
Most certainly. I think you're absolutely right. What a wonderful sentiment. You know, a life fully lived. He was 98 years old, lived a full life, saw history through all of its ups and downs. A positive, wonderfully happy human being. That was Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh, who is no more. Here is our special tribute on the life of the great Marshal.
Even at 98, he was the iconic young man of the Indian military. His cracker of a salute and the perfect poise always belying his years. Arjan Singh, Marshal of the Air Force and India's senior-most military man, has bid farewell and taken his final flight. Born in 1919, a young Arjan Singh joined the Royal Indian Air Force in pre-independent India, flying war missions during the Second World War, winning him the coveted Distinguished Flying Cross. But it would be in 1965 that he first entered India's consciousness as a young Air Force chief during the war with Pakistan, where he steered the country's first use of air power in a big way. While Sam Manekshaw would be bestowed with the honorary rank of Field Marshal in 1973, just 2 years after the blistering war he led, Arjan Singh would receive his title of Marshal of the Air Force only in 2002, 37 years after the air war he commanded. A man widely regarded in the military ranks for his wit, humor and charm, he was an amazing repository of history, literally witnessing the transformation of the Indian Air Force from well before its birth till the modern era. Arjan Singh was also known for being a stickler for military protocol. India marvelled at these images of the Marshal, wheelchair-bound at the time, rising to salute the remains of President Abdul Kalam in 2015. In Arjan Singh, the country loses a beacon of military poise from an era long gone. India today joins the country in wishing one of its finest and most cherished heroes a wonderful onward flight. Bureau Report, India Today.
I want to bring in Air Marshal retired Padma Bandyopadhyay, who was the senior-most woman officer in the Indian Air Force. Air Marshal Bandyopadhyay, good evening to you, madam. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Your thoughts on this sad day, on the passing away of Marshal of the Air Force, Arjan Singh, ma'am?
What should I say? It is the saddest day for the country and for Air Force. It's very, very difficult even to accept the fact that he is no more with us. He was always there for every one of us, leave alone Air Force, every one of us, every chief, right up to the lowest rank. Any problem we could approach. We were always humane. One of the best fighter pilots. I mean, whatever an air chief or a marshal can do, he did everything with 65 Ward, the glory of 65 Ward. It was all because of Marshal of the Air Force. Today he is not with us. It's very sad. I just don't know how to express my feelings. One of the best and the first Marshal of Indian Air Force is no more with us. We all pray. His void cannot be filled, but we pray for peace for him, and that's it. I don't know what to say more.
Thank you very much, Air Marshal Bandyopadhyay. We also have with us former Defence Minister A.K. Antony on the phone line with us. Mr. Antony, good evening to you, sir. Your reactions on this, as Defence Minister, you had met Marshal of the Air Force many times at military events, sir. Your sentiments, your thoughts today, sir.
I pay my respectable homage to the sad demise of the greatest air warrior of India has ever seen.
Yes.
Air Marshal Arjan Singh ji. Throughout his career, till his death, he was a leader of the Air Force. Even when he was suffering from some severe problems. But in all his official functions, he acted as a leader only. throughout the crisis Indian Air Force faced during his leadership, he led the forces from the front. His courage and dedication will be an inspiration for air warriors, not only now, but the future also. And for the modernization of the Indian Air Force, his contribution they cannot forget ever. And more than anything, is a human being also. Apart from modernizing the Air Force and leading the Air Force in all the crises, he was concerned about the welfare of the Air Force for years. Even he contributed a substantial portion of his wealth to the welfare of the armed forces. Throughout my interaction with him, one quality attracted me is his dedication, total dedication and commitment to the nation,
Yes.
armed forces. Another quality is humbleness, simplicity, love and affection for his colleagues, and his concern for the serving as well as ex-servicemen of the armed forces. He will remain as an inspiration for generations of air warriors of the Indian Air Force. Once again, I salute to the respectful memory of Master of the Air Force.
Mr. Anthony, for speaking to India today with your heartfelt words. I know, having covered defense myself, I know that you had an association with Marshal of the Air Force, Arjan Singh. We also have former Minister of State for Defense, M.M. Pallam Raju, with us on the phone line. Mr. Raju, good evening to you. You've been Minister of State for Defense. You have met Marshal of the Air Force. Your thoughts on this very sad day, sir?
Yes, while sharing all the sentiments that have been expressed by Mr. Anthony, I had a very close association with the Marshal. He was a towering personality, and he represented he was the embodiment of the Air Force. And I remember sharing very pleasant moments with him and his wife, because, we shared our wedding anniversary. And I remember, him inviting me for his 50th wedding anniversary. And I could not make it because I was celebrating our wedding anniversary in Hyderabad at that time. And he spoke it like it was. And he expressed his concerns or his opinions in a very, very frank manner. He was all there. And I think his loss is definitely a great loss to the nation, because we don't make officers like that anymore.
We truly don't make officers like him anymore, Mr. Raju. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you will remember him? Because this was an individual, this was an officer, sir, who, whose career and life has spanned, literally the entire history of the country. He saw World War II, he saw combat during that time in pre-independent India. He won a distinguished flying cross. He saw virtually everything there was to see for the Indian Air Force in its most critical era, fighting in 3 wars. What would you remember? As minister, what would you remember most about him, sir?
What I remember was his despite his nature, his humility and his focus. He was, very, very humble. He was a gentleman, a very affectionate person, and yet at the same time he did not hesitate to express his opinion on what should be done for shoring up the Air Force, and also our...
Okay, Major General G.D. Bakshi is also with us on the phone line. General Bakshi, what a sad day today. Is a beacon of inspiration in the military. Marshal of the Air Force, Arjan Singh, we cannot overstate the importance and the towering personality that he was, General Bakshi, this evening. Sad day.
Indeed, Shiv. The passing away of Air Marshal of the Air Force, Arjan Singh, marks the end of an era of titans titans of the stature of Field Marshal Cariappa, Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw, Marshal of the Air Force, the only Marshal of the Air Force, a 5-star Marshal, Arjan Singh Aulak, Distinguished Flying Cross, Padma Vibhushan. He was indeed an iconic figure, a towering giant that straddled the decades, and he had joined the Air Force, in 1938. He had joined the Royal Flying College, emerged in 1939 when the Second World War had just started.
Yes.
He led the number 1 squadron of the Indian Air Force in the Arakan operations, leading bombing sorties, strafing missions personally. He was, as you said, awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, a great achievement. And then he went on to become the, leader of the exhibition squadron, the demonstration squadron of the Indian Air Force. He was a great fighter pilot, a great fighter trainer, and who had trained the likes of Air Marshal Dilbagh Singh and so many others. The best part of his career was when at the age of 45, he became the Air Chief, and he had served for an unprecedented 5 years, non-stop. No other Air Chief had served for 5 years. And in his tenure, we had the India-Pakistan War of 1965. And don't forget, Shiv, that at that time, the critical situation had arisen in Cham, where the Pakistani Patton tanks were almost reaching that bridge. And if they had cut off the Akhnur bridge, well, we would have lost the state. That is the time he was called in, and he said, give me just 1 hour. And within 1 hour, about 15 vampires and Tufanis had thundered over Cham, and they had carpet bombed that area where the Pakistani tanks were coming, and they sort of stalled the Pakistani attack. Thereafter, he went on in that war. The Pakistanis had been gifted the Sabre jet, which was one of the world's best, most combat-tested fighters of the Korean War. They had gifted that to the Pakistanis, and the Pakistanis were sure they would be able to decimate the Indian Air Force. But our NAT pilots, our Hunter pilots, under his brilliant leadership, his inspiring leadership, went on to shoot down the Sabres by the dozens.
Yes.
Starting with Air Marshal Keeler, Air Vice Marshal Keeler.
Yes.
They started shooting down these Sabres like flies. And by the end of the war, the Pakistani Air Force was avoiding contact. They were trying to just survive.
Yes.
And somehow wait for a ceasefire. That shows the extent of this man's leadership, inspiring leadership of the Air Force. He, like I said, was an icon. He had flown over 60 types of aircraft.
Yes.
60 types of aircraft. What a hero. What an icon. What an air warrior. What an inspiring air warrior. Not only for the Air Force, but for the Army and Navy. And in fact, for the youth of the entire nation. Here is a torch of inspiration. And, right in his old age, after he retired, what one liked about him was his grit, his never say die spirit. He just went on and on. He was our ambassador to Switzerland. He was our ambassador to Kenya. He was the Lieutenant Governor of New Delhi, the territory of New Delhi. Arjan Singh Aulak was a man beyond compare. You don't see the likes of such heroes now. Like I said, his passing, Arur, marks the end of an age of titans.
It does mark the end of the age of titans, General Bakshi. I so completely agree with you there. Going forward now, for the country to lose this beacon of inspiration, he was a guru in so many ways. Not many people met him. No, I'm sure not everybody in the military ranks were lucky enough to meet him, but his personality was so strong. The aura that he enjoyed was so strong that people were inspired even from standoff distances, if I may use that phrase. But General Bakshi, what were the things about Air Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh that should be carried forward in the military legacies of the future?
Shiv, he was the epitome of an officer and a gentleman.
Yeah.
He was a soldier to the tips of his toenails. Even in his old age, when he could well have, gone in a wheelchair, and wheelchairs had been provided, He would walk for any function which was which entailed a military, drill and precision. You could see the Marshal of the Air Force walking to receive his accolades, walking tall. That is what he was, an inspiration for every youngster to emulate and follow. It was his enthusiasm, his zen for life. Even at the age of 98, he was up and about and sprightly. That is what I say. Enthusiasm, such enthusiasm is infectious. He radiated enthusiasm and cheer wherever he went. He reached out to his subordinates. He reached out to them, touched their shoulders and inspired them in a way only he could. He was a living repository of the history of our republic and the wars we have fought. Tell me one war that this old man did not fight.
Yes.
Tell me one war that this old man did not fight. He was a titan. Like I said, you don't see the likes of Field Marshal Kippa Karyappa, the Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw, and our very own Marshal of the Air Force, Arjan Singh Aulak, Distinguished Flying Cross, Padma Vibhushan. My God, what a life, what an extraordinary life of, which the keystone of which was the inspiration that he radiated to all soldiers and civilians alike. Arur, I'm sure you would all have found him such an iconic figure. The old man in his blue uniform, sparkling blue uniform, polished shoes, his glistening medals. My God, what a figure, resplendent figure he made on every occasion of national importance, whether it was Republic Independence Day, the anniversary of the Air Force. Incidentally, Shiv, the Air Force anniversary is coming on the 8th of October, and it is tragic that we have lost him. I wish he had been for that one more anniversary of the Air Force, which this old man so loved, so deeply loved.
General G.D. Bakshi, stay with me. I also have with us Union Minister Mahesh Sharma on the phone line with us. Minister Sharma, your thoughts on the passing away, on the death of Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh. A very sad day, sir, for the entire country.
Today we have lost a national hero. He is a role model for thousands and lakhs of the soldiers of this country, and the country is proud of his service to the nation. Definitely during his period, the armed forces and especially the air forces has especially a tribute to his great warrior, and definitely let his soul may rest in peace, and his memories will continue down the line in the memories of the people of India for a long time.
Thank you very much, Minister Mahesh Sharma, condoling the death of Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh. This was an officer who was 45 years old, a young officer who became Chief of the Indian Air Force in 1964. He was a war chief in 1965, seeing India's first full application of air power during the 1965 war with Pakistan. It was against a much better equipped Pakistan Air Force at the time that the Indian Air Force acquitted itself with great honor and pride. He went on to retire in 1969 and was made Marshal of the Air Force, an honorary 5-star rank in 2002 under the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government. We're taking a very quick break. We're back with this story when you come back. Thanks for staying with India Today's non-stop coverage of the demise of Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh. We have with us on the phone line now former Chief of the Army Staff, General Bikram Singh. Good evening, General Singh. Privileged to have you this evening with us here on India Today. A sad day for the country, a sad day for the military, General Singh.
Yes, indeed. I think it's a very sad day. We lost one of the finest, one of the most outstanding military leaders, which I would say the country has seen. And I salute Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh for what he has done. In fact, it is on account of the outstanding performance of the Indian Air Force during 1960 war that he was made the Marshal of the Air Force. And his contributions all along, his tenure as a chief of almost 5 years, have been outstanding, and thereafter, even as ambassador of our country at various places, he's done a stupendous job. And I remember meeting him on a number of occasions. I had the proud privilege, the honor of interacting with him on a number of occasions. And I think I have mentioned earlier that every time I walked away from him, it was a session of learning, great learning from him. And I think I have yet to come across such a great leader before in my life. God bless him, may his soul rest in peace, and I salute the great air warrior.
General Singh, what would you remember most about him? You know, as Chief of Army Staff at all of those ceremonial events, I'm sure you had many interactions with the Marshal of the Air Force. What would you remember most about him today, sir?
You know, what I liked about him was that, you know, he would ask me questions about what was happening in the army, what was happening in Jammu and Kashmir, Northeast, other parts, what I felt about things. And, you know, he would listen. I think one of the greatest quality in any great leader is the interpersonal skills. And in the interpersonal skills, it is not just the communication, it's the ability to listen. He would
yes.
you know, digest what you had said. And then come out with some of the outstanding, some very valuable, you know, comments and suggestions. That is something which I'll never forget. And it's not at a number of occasions with him. Whenever I would, you know, sit down with him or talk to him, maybe at the Rashtrapati Bhavan or other, you know, functions, I would, you know, he would ask me a number of questions. I would tell him what was going on. But then his analysis, his final points would be something which were worth, you know, taking away and implementing. So from that point of view, I think a very seasoned soldier, a great military strategic leader, a visionary leader, who I would say is responsible today to bring about our Indian Air Force today, which is today second to none. And the slot it has today in the international arena is on account of a gentleman, of a great leader like him. And a great visionary leader, I salute him, and may his soul rest in peace.
Absolutely. General Singh, thank you so much for speaking to India today. A truly sad day for India and for the military. We're going to get you more reactions. We're going to get you more reactions from the government and from the military as well as from the veterans community. Minister BP Chaudhary is with us for a reaction as well. Minister Chaudhary, your reactions, your sentiments today on the passing away of Marshal of the Air Force, Arjan Singh. Okay, we've lost that audio with Minister BP Chaudhary. We'll try and re-establish that link. But I want to play out for you once again our tribute on the passing away of Marshal of the Air Force, Arjan Singh. Here is the life and the times of one of the greatest military personalities this country has ever seen.
Even at 98, he was the iconic young man of the Indian military. His cracker of a salute and the perfect poise always belying his advancing years. Arjan Singh, Marshal of the Air Force and India's senior-most military man, has bid farewell and taken his final flight. Born in 1919, a young Arjan Singh joined the Royal Indian Air Force in pre-independent India, flying war missions during the Second World War, winning him the coveted Distinguished Flying Cross. But it would be in 1965 that he first entered India's consciousness as a young Air Force chief during the war with Pakistan, where he steered the country's first use of air power in a big way. Whilst Shaw would be bestowed with the honorary rank of Field Marshal in 1973, just 2 years after the blistering war he led, Arjan Singh would receive his title of Marshal of the Air Force only in 2002, 37 years after the air war he commanded. A man widely regarded in the military ranks for his wit, humor and charm. He was an amazing repository of history, literally witnessing the transformation of the Indian Air Force from well before its birth till the modern era. Arjan Singh was also known for being a stickler for military protocol. India marveled at these images of the Marshal, wheelchair-bound at the time, rising to salute the remains of President Abdul Kalam in 2015. In Arjan Singh, the country loses a beacon of military poise from an era long gone. India today joins the country in wishing one of its finest and most cherished heroes a wonderful onward flight. Bureau Report, India Today.
And reactions of condolence have been pouring in all evening for the last hour since the news broke about the death of Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh. We spoke to former Defence Minister A.K. Antony, past chiefs and India's most well-known military and strategic affairs experts. Take a look at some of the reactions. Mr. Antony, good evening to you, sir. Your reactions on this, as Defence Minister, you had met Marshal of the Air Force many times at military events, sir. Your sentiments, your thoughts today, sir.
I pay my respectable homage to the sad demise of the greatest air warrior of India has ever seen.
Yes.
Air Marshal Arjan Singh ji. Throughout his career, till his death, he was a leader of the Air Force. Even when he was suffering from some serious problems. But in all his official functions, he acted as a leader only. Throughout the crisis Indian Air Force faced during his leadership, he led the forces from the front. His courage and dedication will be an inspiration for air warriors, not only now, but the future also. And for the modernization of the Indian Air Force, his contribution we cannot forget ever. And more than anything, is a human being also. Apart from modernizing the Air Force and leading the Air Force in all the crises.
We have with us former Defence Minister and current Chief Minister of Goa, Manohar Parrikar, with us on the phone line. Mr. Parrikar, good evening to you. A very sad day for India, for the military, for the Air Force, but the nation as a whole with the passing away of Marshal Arjan Singh, sir.
Yes, it's a very sad day, definitely, because we lost an icon and we lost a person who always saw Indian Air Force in the best of modernized conditions.
Mr. Parrikar, what would you remember most? As Defence Minister, you had many occasions to interact and meet with Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh at military ceremonies and events. What would you remember most and cherish about him, sir?
I always wondered how at this age also he was still aware of all the latest, and his interest was always about the modernization. In a couple of occasions when I met, he asked me how things are moving on this front. So he was always interested in latest for the Indian Air Force.
Manohar Parrikar, former Defence Minister of the country, remembering and cherishing the memory of Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh. We're going to take a very quick break on this sad news for the country, for the military, the passing away of a legend, a war hero and a true citizen and icon. Farewell to Marshal of the Air Force Arjan Singh.